Hello, my name is Emma Toole, and I'm a research assistant on an NSF-funded grant at Northeastern University. I'm also a third year at Northeastern, studying business administration, double concentrating in supply chain management and marketing, and also pursuing a minor in sustainable business practices. Today, we will be talking about the visualization of labor trafficking within supply chains. Let's get started. So starting out, what are the research questions that me and my team are trying to solve? So there's three main research questions that relate to my research. Number one, what is the underlying supply chain structure of labor trafficking in the agricultural sector? Number two, how do methods of disruption map to supply chain impact? And number three, to what extent do the categories of catastrophic impact map to the classes of agents, for example, policymakers, service providers, community members who can implement the disruption? So additionally, I'm not the first person to have ever done research related to human trafficking. Many others have mapped illicit supply chain networks such as drugs. Some, like Campania, have also mapped human trafficking networks that touches upon organized crime. This literature is also a stream of supply chain disruption, which is highly related to our work. And we are building on this existing literature to align our mappings with common supply chain diagrams and add in features for disruption capabilities. How do we solve these research questions? Going into these supply chain mappings, we have been analyzing 12 federally prosecuted human trafficking cases within the United States that all relate to the agricultural sector. Some people on my team first start out by coding facts of the case into a data format, such as analyzing the people, relationships, transportation, and potential and actual disruptions within the case. From then, once they have finished coding the case, I'm then able to analyze the data and then work to map it. I first start out by creating a generalized supply chain mapping, analyzing the 4 phases of human trafficking, which I've created these categories based on the pre-existing literature of trafficking phases, starting out first with the pre-recruitment phase with the at-risk population involved, the recruitment phase, how these people are recruited, exploitation, and post-exploitation phases. From there, I'm then able to identify the actual and potential mechanisms that could have disrupted the labor trafficking. So I analyze the different disruptors and actors involved and the types of disruption, the level of disruption, and where it could have happened within the supply chain. So today I'm going to be actually walking you through a generalized case mapping because obviously I'm making these 12 federally prosecuted cases, but we really want to analyze what have I been seeing overall within all of the cases? What are some of the commonalities? What are some of the things that are common across all of the cases that we can investigate further? And I'm going to be walking you through that today. So starting out in the pre-recruitment phase, we start with an at-risk population. These people could be a minority, come from a rural area, they could be impoverished and or homeless. For these at-risk populations, these are also not mutually exclusive and they are not complete. This is just some characteristics that I tend to see across the other 12 cases. Moving on to the recruitment phase, a recruitment agency or a local recruiter in the area will approach these at-risk populations and offer them work, pay, housing, things that sound really great. So then they get kind of sucked into the system. For them to then start working, they face high recruitment fees, loans, and sometimes even collateral to get the work. For example, sometimes people will have to give over the deeds to their house to these recruitment agents to prove that they want to work for them. These recruitment agents then falsify immigration records in order to get these people into the US or get them licensed to work. So going on to the exploitation phase, these workers are either driven or fly into the US, where then they arrive at the farm they'll be staying at for the majority of the time, and they get trapped essentially because the heads of the organizations there, they confiscate the official documents from the workers, and they tend to be given fake documentation to be able to work on certain farms. For example, some citrus farms, you need to have identification cards to enter the farm to work. So these workers are then given fake cards to do that. And they use cars and vans to get in between work and housing, which shows that there's like transportation going on. And when they work on the farms, they're threatened verbally, they face physical and mental abuse, they receive fewer to no wages, they have poor working and living conditions, and they receive no medical treatment. So from there, moving on to the post-exploitation phase, there's a few options that these workers face when they obviously get into this exploitive situation. For example, they face deportation, they could get deported, they could get arrested, they have the option to escape, but most often are not. The workers end up reporting. So for example, though victims tend to take action themselves and contact the authorities, or someone close to the victims, such as a neighbor or relative or someone in the community, will understand and realize that this human trafficking has been going on and tell the authorities. An investigation occurs, traffickers may get prosecuted, many face penalties. In the cases that we have been analyzing, all of the traffickers get prosecuted, but that isn't always the case. And then some of the victims receive T visas, and CP, which stands for continued presence, which allows survivors to stay within the United States, as well as sometimes financial compensation. So after making this mapping, it basically shows the entire supply chain network of the at-risk population, how they got exploited, how the process occurred, to how the chain was then broken. And then able to analyze the potential disruptors and add on to this existing mapping to help show how the chain could have been broken sooner. And that could look something like this. So across the bottom, you see the potential disruptors, the main actors that I've seen across my 12 federally prosecuted cases, and analyzing, these are the main actors across them all. So on the bottom, from left to right, we have community/family members, banks, external hires, labor services, Department of Labor, the EEOC, the local police, and escaped victims. So from there, I'm then able to add these different arrows and lines to help identify the level of disruption, the type of disruption, and what phase it could have happened. So for this generalized mapping, it looks something like this. I spend so much time in these mappings, but for someone else, this could look a little bit overwhelming. On the right, the double arrows show the actual disruption, the colored arrows show the level of disruption from minor, moderate, and catastrophic, and the small symbols above the potential disruptors show the type of disruption, as well as what actor would have conducted this disruption. These mappings are then also created with layers. They're interactive, so in the sense that you can toggle on and off what you want to be able to see. If you only want to see disruptions related to the Department of Labor, for example, or you only want to see disruptions that are viewed as catastrophic, or ones that are related to information security, you'll be able to do that. I've created these mappings in a way where you can toggle on and off what you want to be able to see, making them really interactive, as well as a little bit less overwhelming to the eye. So moving on, what is the goal for these mappings, the mission? So you may have noticed very briefly in the previous slide that we want to try to share these with law enforcement groups. As you can see, two of the main actors that we tend to see across these supply chain networks are the Department of Labor and the local police. These tend to be more on the catastrophic and moderate side, and they tend to relate to information security, which means that these groups just aren't educated. There's been a few times within the mappings that I noticed that either the local police or the Department of Labor, they either interact with a victim, but don't understand that the human trafficking situation has been going on, maybe because of a language barrier, or that they aren't trained on understanding what it is. Or sometimes the Department of Labor will get tips to investigate certain things, but then just don't follow through with it. So these two actors can play a really big impact in preventing human trafficking moving forward in the cases that we've analyzed. Additionally, we want to make this publicly available on the internet by the end of our research project in 2023, which can obviously help spread awareness about how to prevent human trafficking and how it occurs by analyzing these mappings. Additionally, some other people on my team are using my mappings to then analyze further and create a node arc structure. And overall, by analyzing the labor trafficking processes in these network diagrams, we offer visual insights and recommendations to more effectively enact disruptions. Thank you so much for attending. Any questions?